The following is a presentation of iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations on LSRTV, the voice of sim racing.
Good evening, race fans, and welcome to those of you watching on iRacing Live, Facebook, and YouTube. This is LSRTV's coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking, live tonight from the last great Coliseum, Bristol Motor Speedway in Bristol, Tennessee. I am James Pike, joined tonight in the booth by my colleague Chris Murdoch, and in the virtual production trailer by the one and only lovely and talented Cisco Scaramuza. Chris, it's the high banks, it's the night lights, it's just Bristol at night. I'm trying to think of other good adjectives. I'm running out of them very quickly because this race can be a madhouse very, very quickly.
It can, from start to finish. You're gonna have cars inside, outside, all over the place. It's Bristol. I love this track. I cannot wait to get this race underway. I've been waiting for it all night long. It's just Bristol. I mean, you can't get any better than this, any more fast-paced, any more, uptight, next to the wall. You're going to be there all night long. We'll have to see who can keep it off the wall here tonight for this 250-lap race.
250 laps. The high line is the fast line here on the sim, so you're going to see a lot of guys up there, and especially the guys near our cutoff line, because we've got this, Darlington, and Richmond, and then the playoffs begin. And you look at the guys that are sitting right out of it, and we got some big names that are currently sitting out of the playoffs at the moment. Lionel Calisto, Nelson Rivera, Austin Coop, Sean Boundy, Anthony DeBarro, who qualified in the third spot for tonight's race, at least as it stands with 2 minutes to go in the session. So if you're any one of those guys, you've got to step it up and find a way to win, because at this stage, you're almost too far out to make it just on points. You've got to win your way in.
You really do, and this is going to be a great track to do it, especially for your short track guys like Austin Coop out there, who has been so strong at the short tracks this season, and he's looking forward to this race. He's up there, qualified well as it stands right now there, James, and he's in the hunt as it stands right now. Lionel Calisto, of course, on that bubble, being 9 points back. You're going to be looking for him to make a strong finish, and Bristol is an exciting track, but when you're in that points bubble there, James, it's also a wild card, because anything can happen here at Bristol. You can go from having the night of your life to it being ripped out of your hands in one corner, because this place takes no prisoners, and it can go from good to bad in mere seconds.
And how different this situation would be for Anthony DeBarro at the moment. He got into it with Daniel Eberhardt in the spring race here and was running right at the front of the field. Those two were fighting for the win. DeBarro ended up the loser of the contact that was made between the two, and he fell back of the pack, didn't get the win. He's still fighting for a place in the playoffs. Eberhardt has already got his locked up. So things can change at a dime, as you said. And I think we have to look at Coop tonight, too, because you said it. He's a short track specialist. He got his first win in the NASCAR iRacing Series earlier this week at Bristol. So this, and I think Richmond as well, are 2 weeks that he's had circled on his calendar for a while to try and win his way into the playoffs.
And I've heard him talk highly of Richmond and Bristol, respectively, this entire night. He coming into this race, he said, "Well, I don't race any differently, no matter what the point standings is," because we brought up the fact that he's about 50 points out of that cut line there, James, and he said, "I'm not going to race any differently. I never race any differently. I'm going to go out there, give it the best I've got, and he's going to race like he has to. He's got to win, and he does. He has to get a win to get in here, or there's just going to be no way to get him. So we'll have to pay attention to him tonight."
Pay attention to him and a lot of other drivers, which we are going to introduce to you now in the LSRTV starting grid for tonight's race at Bristol, which is led by the pole sitter, Corey Wolf, with a time of 14.330 seconds to start in pole position tonight. David Washington will be on his outside, will start second. Anthony DeBarro, who came really close in the spring to winning here, still needs it to get into the playoffs, will start from third in that number 99 machine. Ashton Crowder will start fourth. Austin Coop, we talked about him in pre-race, he'll begin from fifth. Andrew Freenars won at Talladega, got himself in early to the playoffs. He'll be there come September. He's sixth on the grid for tonight. Dylan Jones, winner in Atlanta, will be starting seventh, and then Daniel Eberhardt, your spring race winner, eighth. Trevor Rapallo, Daytona winner, ninth, and Nick Silver, your top 10 for tonight's race on the grid.
Shane Ewing in that 32 machine, he's going to be 11th on that inside line. Nelson Rivera, he's going to be 12th, 13th. Sean Casto, John Abbott in that 10 machine, he's going to be 14th, 15th. Randy Yokin, La Placa is going to be 16th. In that 58 machine. Lionel Kalisto is going to be 17th. 18th is Dwayne Vincent. 19th is Brandon Bowie. Justin Lisby is going to round out your top 20.
Final six starters of the grid are Doug Roth in the 43 machine. Starts 21st. Ross Cato will begin tonight from 22nd. Mitch Rollo rolls off from 23rd in the 96 machine. Giovanni Vermonti starts 24th tonight. Gabe Wood in the 09 car will begin from 25th, and Douglas Wyatt will start shotgun on the field in 26th position for tonight's race, the 23rd of the 2017 Full Throttle Cup Series from Bristol Motor Speedway. We've completed the grid, so we'll take a look at track facts here for Bristol. We're going to go for 225 laps tonight, and at 0.533 miles per lap, we'll go for just south of 120 miles by the time we're all said and done here on LSRTV. You have 24 to 28 degrees of banking in the corners. It's not quite as pronounced as it was when they first repaved this place a few years ago when it had progressive banking. And then you've got 6 to 10 degrees on the straights. It's fast. I think that's all you really can say about this place.
It is fast, and these guys are going to have to pay attention to these tires, especially on that outside line, James, as this race gets started, because even though it's not as prominent as, say, the B car was this week, there is that chance of tire spin, and it's very, very risky up there on that high side. If you just stomp on the throttle coming off the corner, you will spin and not get the restart, and maybe even bunch up a few drivers along the way. So I'm going to be watching for that high side on this start, and especially restarts in the future if they don't take tires, to see how that tire spin works out.
Watch that, and watch how drivers get on the throttle as they come out of corners here. We've seen it a lot in the official races. You see it a lot every time you come to Bristol. It's not as pronounced, I think, in this race as it is in the daytime, because you have a little bit more grip in the night, but drivers will get on the throttle too early and will spin themselves out towards the inside retaining wall. Whether or not anybody else gets collected, we'll find out here. But we're glad to have you with us on LSR TV for the 23rd race of the 2017 Full Throttle Cup Series season, which is underway from Bristol. The night race gets off with Corey Wolf jumping out to the race lead and immediately going to the top side by about a car length or two. Washington has to fight off DeBarro, who tried to jump right in front of him and got second position away from the 98 machine. So DeBarro up to second, already fighting hard for the win. He knows he needs, and Wolf gets right into the wall there on lap one. Not a lot of damage, but it's certainly noticeable on the number 16.
And watch this inside line here, James, on the start. These drivers will be able to use a little bit of that up, maybe the first 10 laps of this race as it gets on, but then you'll see them surrender to that high line. So everybody trying to get as much as they can going down into these races. We're seeing everybody kind of single file out right now. No notable two-wide battle going on. Everybody trying to single file out, keep their heads on their shoulders, and get this race underway.
All patience here, I think, from a lot of these guys at the front of the field. Washington settled into third, and then Ashton Crowder, who qualified fourth, is sitting there in the fourth spot. And that a speed cone knockoff, LW Miller and knockoff, something to that effect, I think. Number 27, but very clearly a nod to the 36 machine that we've seen in the Whelen Modified Tour in years past. And then you've got Coop there sitting in 5th. Jones is up a spot from the start, up to 6. Freedoms back to 7th. Teammates there with Aegis Motorsports. And then Daniel Eberhardt still in 8th. He won the race here in the spring, trying to get up to the front of the field. And they're side by side a little bit as they go through the corner. But everybody, I think, really just trying to get these first few laps under their belt and see how these cars will react under green flag conditions.
Yeah, and we're seeing the 11 of Dylan C. Jones working that inside line on Coop just a little bit, but he's not going to be able to get it done. Like I mentioned, getting about 10 laps in, you're not going to be able to make too many passes. The 88 gets in the wall just a little bit there, but he's still able to power off. That highlight just too prominent. It looks like maybe Dylan's going to get stuck down there on the inside line. Nope, going to try and slide up in front of the 88, not going to be able to quite do it. He's kind of following that middle line as caution's out at Bristol.
Yellow flag out here for the first time tonight, and Dwayne Vincent, Gio Bermonti, and Gabe Wood are the ones involved here at Bristol. We'll take a look at the replay and see what happened momentarily, and I believe Gabe Wood just had nowhere to go, as yeah, I think Vincent might have gotten some help, maybe from Mitch Rollo, perhaps. That's what it looks like. And as they came off of the corner, I believe Rollo just got into the rear of the 13 ever so slightly. Yep, cut underneath him, got into him. They started checking up. Bermonti checked up and got into the side of Doug Roth, and that sent him around. And then Wood tried to check up and avoid it all, but I think he ended up locking up the brakes a little bit and just kind of going right down the banking into the space where Bermonti and Vincent had parked their cars a little bit. I don't think the damage is big enough on any three of those guys to completely end their race, but certainly is not going to help their cause with all that damage.
And it's so easy to run out of room here, James. We all know too well at Bristol, and even getting slowed down once a wreck happened, and that's what happened to Gabe Wood there. Just wrong place, wrong time. But let's talk about pit stops here. You're not going to see too much of a change up on the top spot next to the pace car, except for Corey Wolf and that 16 machine. He led us to the green flag and led the entirety of that run. He brought it down pit lane while everybody else stayed out, so that's going to be an interesting call on the 16. He'll be starting further back in the field, so we'll have to see where that driver turns out to be and see how much of a struggle it will be, because we know how hard passing is here at Bristol, James, and we'll have to see how long it takes him to get back up there and at least be able to fight for that top spot.
And how much you use the bumper, because that's something that always comes into play here at Bristol. How many times have we seen the bump and run? Doesn't matter if it's Jeff Gordon on Rusty Wallace in 2002 or just Saturday night when Kyle Busch threw the bumper to Kyle Larson to go claim stage 1 for his Joe Gibbs Racing team. It happens a lot here, so how and when you use it, I think, are two things that we have to try and be mindful of, especially up here in the booth, because that's where you begin your little mini rivalries over the course of a race, and that's where you begin building up your ledgers and your accounts and all those sorts of things, and put things into the memories of drivers here that give them reason to pay you back at maybe some opportune times for them, but inopportune times for you, to say the least.
And we definitely know how fast those ledgers fill up here, James, because nobody really takes anything from anybody at Bristol Motor Speedway. They'll be quick to use the bumper, so it's going to be interesting, like you said, to see when that 16 does use the bumper, because he was pretty fast. He was keeping a distance on that 99 of DeBarro and the 98 of Washington, so he was able to stick up there and he was able to lead a few laps. So him knowing that he's fast enough to stay up there and get those guys and stay up towards the front, it's got to be looming in the back of his mind when this restarts, starting all the way back from that 15th position.
In 15th is where you'll find Corey Wolf on this restart. As the lights go off on the pace car, we'll get the restart on lap 15. Top 10 looks like this: DeBarro, Washington, Crowder, Coop, Jones, Freedars, Eberhardt, Silver, Rapallo, and Rivera. Big names up there. Got a few guys trying to fight for a win to get in the playoffs up there. Coop, Rivera among them, and, oh, by the way, the leader, Anthony DeBarro. who will get us underway for the second green flag run of tonight's race here from Bristol. Back underway they go. Good restart for Navarro. He jumps off by about a car length and a half or two. Crowder will try and jump up in front of Washington, but doesn't clear him fast enough. So Washington should have the momentum on the high side. Crowder may be relegated back to third here as Washington rolls the momentum up top to go get second.
And look, almost 3 wide there going down in the corner as Coop and Dillon almost split Crowder there, but Jones backed out of it in that 11 machine. Now it's 2 wide between Coop and Crowder, but I want to talk about that 98 of David Washington. He hasn't seemed to be figuring out these starts or restarts here yet, James. He's always slow on the start, and he had a huge checkup on that high line, caused Coop to check all the way back up, but luckily everybody made it out past through, but it looks like Ashton Crowder stuck on that inside line is going to drop a few positions here.
Getting freight trained, the first example we've seen of it all night, where if you get trapped on the bottom during a restart and there isn't enough space between drivers for you to slide back into your spot, then you will lose your positions pretty handily. He restarted right there near the front of the field. He's going to drop back all the way to 6th before he gets in line in front of Nick Silver. Meanwhile, Washington is sitting there and is just kind of holding himself at about maybe a car length and a half off of DeBarro's rear bumper, and then Coop is right there in the 3rd spot, and he's maybe about the same distance behind Washington. Then Freenars has come up to the 4th position, Jones is 5th, and then Crowder sits back in that 6th spot now that he's back in line.
And how about this top 3 here, James? 1 driver in the middle of 2 drivers that need a win. The driver in that middle, the 98 of David Washington, has 3 wins, James, and he's your points leader. So he's sandwiched in between 2 drivers who desperately need a win. So it just shows to show how important Bristol is for these drivers. Anthony DeBarro's doing a great job leading this race, able to keep that 98 behind him, but the 6 of Austin Coop looming in the distance, but he can't get too comfortable because he's got that 88 just behind him all over the back bumper. So I'm going to be looking for that 88 to be making a move on Coop here any moment now.
That's what's so difficult about this, and that's what's going to be the problem for a lot of guys here, is that you can get enough momentum to get underneath somebody. As you see everybody creeping up on the bar a little bit more. Now you see Coop go to the bottom, tries to find room around Washington, as I just said. But the problem is that when they're all bunched up like this at the front of the field, it's so easy for you to drop down there and then lose your spot up top and end up dropping 2 or 3 positions because everybody gets the roll of momentum on the high side, and you're just so much faster up there than you are on the bottom. You end up shooting yourself in the foot when you try and go grab an extra position.
You do, and I think that's what we saw from Ashton Crowder, who has fallen all the way back to that 6th place position from starting in that 3rd place position. He was trying to get it just a little bit too much on that inside line, and we saw him drop all the way back, and now he's behind Dillon Jones, and as you mentioned, he's able to get up to that back bumper, but he can't do anything with that momentum. It's just how Bristol works. You're gonna have to use that bumper at some point, and we're alluding to it all night, and we're gonna be working up to that. It's only lap 27, and these laps do go by super fast here, James, but you just got to be patient.
You have to be patient. That's what David Washington's doing right now. Before he caught Anthony DeBarro, he was running about 2/10 a lap quicker than the 99 machine. Now he's there, and they're both running right around the 14.9 neighborhood. But I think what we're seeing right now is that Washington clearly has the faster of the cars between those 2 guys. But can he find a way around DeBarro that doesn't involve the bumper and doesn't involve him going to the bottom and opening the door up for Austin Coop to go take the high side? That's the tricky thing that you have to navigate if you are behind the wheel of that 98 car.
And mistakes are always a possibility, and I think that's what David Washington's hoping on, because look at him, just how close he gets to that back bumper of DeBarro going down into the corner, and Coop's just as close going down in there. So Anthony DeBarro either needs to pick up the pace or he'll find that bumper being used, because David Washington, I don't think he could have fit a piece of paper between the bumper of those 2 cars. So it's going to shape up as you see Coop maybe shading that middle line just a bit. He was shading the inside, didn't quite go there. He can't do that too much because you got that 88 right behind him, and if you do, like you mentioned, shade that middle line too much, you're going to leave that line open for the top side. So everybody trying to do their best at holding the top side while also trying to get around the person in front of them.
So if you guys here aren't afraid to look at the bottom, I see 1 car of the Aegis Motorsports, Chef Andy's Lobster Rolls Brigade, looking down towards the bottom. Both of them, actually, Andrew Freenars and Dylan Jones, trying to find their way underneath Austin Coop, who is biding his time behind Washington, who's trying to find the way around Anthony DeBarro. So they don't have any problem going down there. Washington tries to go underneath DeBarro just a little bit, not too much though, but you're starting to see the lines vary as we get closer towards maybe like 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and they go side by side for a moment. Crowder tried to get underneath Jones, but just didn't have the momentum off the corner to get it done. And Daniel Everhart's all the way at the bottom there, trying to make his way around Nick Silver to grab the 7th position.
And it looked like Crowder just got a little bent out of shape coming out of 4, and you mentioned watching the drivers get on the throttle. Well, if you get on the throttle too hard and you're riding that bottom line, as you'll see drivers cut it down there, you can really upset these cup cars. So you have to be careful with running that bottom line. But the 90 of Everhart trying everything he can to get by the 24, but it's just not going to happen. You can see the momentum he loses off the corner every time he tries that move compared to the high line. He's got to try something else.
Also, a quick note for those of you wondering about Corey Wolf and where he is in this race, still 16th. He hasn't gained a spot since he came down pit road. So if I'm a crew chief on top of one of these boxes, I'm making note of that and saying, I don't care about fresh tires. Track position is everything here, unless everybody else behind you comes down to get 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles. Otherwise, you're a sitting duck.
And that's what surprised me about his move, especially 8 laps in there, James. They hadn't done too many laps on the tires, and even when you go down to pit road, you still have enough time to get out of it, because he saw nobody was going down there with him, so he stuck with it, and now he finds himself back in 6th heat. Not saying Corey Wolf can't get back up to the front, because he can. He was able to stay out front for the entirety of that first run, but he's got a lot of work to do, and a lot of work on his shoulders, and we've had a really lengthy green flag run.
And as we sit and watch all these guys try and figure out their way around other people, Washington has come back to the rear bumper of Anthony DeBarro and is really starting to press him now, ducking down underneath the 99 every single time they go into the corner. I wonder if this might bring Austin Coop back into it, who is consistently riding the high line, but it won't matter because we have another yellow flag out on track. Replay will be forthcoming, but issues here to bring us our second caution at Bristol.
Yeah, just trying to find the car. It's going to be the 8 of Randy Yoakum. You saw him stopped down at the bottom of the track when the leaders went by. It looks like he just got maybe a little bent out of shape coming off of turn 4 there, and you see him lose it down towards the wall and right back up in the hard in the outside wall and back down on the track. So like we mentioned before, getting on the throttle out of the corners, such a risky move, and we saw him get a little bit bent out of shape and sent that car down and right back up the track again, James.
He gets into big trouble early and is arguably done for the night. John Abbott got some damage on the left front of that car, and it looks like the suspension got hit pretty good, which is really all that matters here at Bristol. The aerodynamics aren't so important. You're not really going that fast, but when that left front tire gets bent out of shape and you have to tweak the wheel in a different way to get around here, it can make your night really difficult really quick.
It can, and we've had pit stops underway, nothing really changing up towards the front of the field. Anthony DeBarro still comes out front, but something unique about Bristol is everybody pretty much knows, it's pretty much common knowledge, there are 2 pit roads, one on the front stretch, one on the back stretch. There's 22 pit stalls on the front straightaway, and then the rest are on the back straightaway, so you can have varying pit stops, and it's hard to do it, especially under green flag pit stops, James, picking and getting in and off of pit roads. So that might be a struggle we look forward to later, because we were getting pretty up there on the green flag laps, not nearly enough to complete a green flag run, but also something crew chiefs up on the box have to make a note of.
They sit, they wait, they wonder, they try and figure out things, and sometimes they look like magicians, sometimes they look like they've worn the dunce cap all day. It just depends on the way strategy plays out here. In the meantime, we'll take a moment to remind you that coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series is brought to you by Joel Real Timing, the official timing software of LSRTV. Whether you spend your time on the sim behind the wheel, on the pit box, or from the spotter stand, JRT is the go-to software for iRacing timing and scoring analytics. You can get yourself a basic download for free, or you can get the pro version today by logging on to joel-real-timing.com. As we loop our way back around towards one of the many high banks of Bristol, it seems like. It's impressive. It's almost 5 stories tall from top to bottom, and having had the pleasure of being there this weekend, it's something that you don't really, I guess, appreciate until you see it in person, but it's impressive, and you wonder how, especially some of the track crew cars here that have been sweeping off this concrete half mile, actually stay on there, because it looks like they could tip over at a moment's notice. But regardless, it's what makes these cars go fast. It's what makes Bristol, Bristol. It wouldn't be Bristol without the high speeds. The high speeds wouldn't be possible without the banking. So we'll see a little bit more of that here when they go back to green in half a lap. The restart will come on lap 49. DeBarro, Washington, Coop, Greenarch, Crowder, Jones, Earhart, Silver, Callisto, Rivera. Your top 10 for this restart, which will come almost a fifth of the way through the race. As DeBarro gets going and gets a really, really good jump. Really got away from everybody there. Washington up to second very quickly. Then looks like you've got Andrew Greenarch, who's going to be able to jump to the outside. Coop's the one in danger of getting trapped on the bottom now, because here comes Ashton Crowder. He got pinned up there just a few laps ago. Now he's the one pinning Coop down to the bottom. And it looks like Dylan Jones might be able to capitalize as well, and maybe until Nick Silver before Coop is able to get back in line, as one car gets in the wall very briefly. The 96 of Mitch Rollo made contact with somebody there, and he got a good piece of the outside retaining wall with the 98 machine.
And I think we figured it out on these restarts, James. Third place position is definitely where you do not want to be, and Coop is learning that the hard way. He's able to hold off the 11 of Dylan Jones, but he's going to have to surrender and go towards the top side, I should say. And he has the great window to do it now, sliding up in front of the 24 of Nick Silver. Going back up to your lead, we saw it starting to hype up just a bit, as now Washington looking towards the inside of DeBarro, not going to quite get it done. It's going to allow Freenars maybe to close in the door on that 88 machine, but Washington really wants that lead here.
Washington really hunting for the race lead hard, putting a lot more pressure on DeBarro than I think DeBarro's seen all night long. Meanwhile, just an update on that little incident with Mitch Rollo. Got into Lionel Callisto. Looked like a racing incident. They were both fighting for the same spot on track on the exit of turn 3, and they just bounced off each other, and Rollo was the one who ended up the, I suppose, loser of that occasion. He's the one who went into the outside retaining wall, but Rollo's still rolling along in 11th, so didn't really lose too much time from that incident. So we'll keep tabs on that if that ends up being anything more as we progress through this race. Still, though, at the front of this field, DeBarro and Washington up there pacing everyone around, and Washington still trying to throw the pressure on the driver of the number 99 machine.
He's fallen back just a little bit here, James. He lost a little bit of momentum, but he quickly worked it back in all over the back bumper. He's getting beat off of 1 and 2, but he can close the gap down coming off of 3 and 4, as you'll see it right here, closing in that gap. But he's keeping it kind of steady. He knows that tires are important here, and track position is important. Like you mentioned before, track position is key at a track like Bristol. So to keep the track position, you must keep the tires on the car. And that 98 machine is fully aware of that, and he's backed off the 99 just a bit. But I'm not going to say if that 99 of Anthony DeBarro doesn't make a mistake, then that 98 won't be looking to capitalize.
Oh, the 98 will be right there, no question. I think if you're Washington, I almost wonder if tire temperatures are the thing that you're watching. You can press DeBarro for a little bit, but if you do, you end up really putting some heat on those good years, and then you have to back it up for a few laps if you don't get around him, just to cool the tires off and get another run at him again, which it looks like he's done, and he may be going after DeBarro this time once more. Gets a pretty good run out of turn 2 there. He's looking around trying to find a spot. DeBarro's covering ever so slightly, but no rest for the wicked there any which way. Washington just will not give DeBarro a break.
Washington not giving it a break, and he was almost able to shade up on that high side as DeBarro almost left the door open coming off of 4. Not going to be the same thing coming off of 4 this time. DeBarro closing that gap, and now look at Freenars on that 88 back there. He's starting to close in here. Mr. Pike is as we're crossing lap 63 and almost to 64.
Oh, he gets turned! He gets turned and it brings out the yellow, and Farinars goes into the inside retaining wall. Crowder goes into the inside retaining wall. Coop hits somebody hard there on the front end, but what a huge incident at the front of this field, and this will change the complexion of the race significantly as we have the replay coming up momentarily. Washington got into the back of DeBarro, and that sent DeBarro around, and then as they all checked up, Farinars went around, and then Crowder went around, and then Jones was able to sneak through on the bottom, and as DeBarro came bouncing right across the track, Austin Coop had nowhere to go, and talk about really bad luck for the 6 machine. I feel like he's been in a lot of it as of late, and this just continues it because he was in position to have a pretty good night before all that happened.
And I don't really know what was going through DeBarro's head there, because he had all the time in the world to lock down the car and hold the brakes and just spin it towards the inside. But as you see, he really didn't. He turned it right back up and tried to correct it and save it up into the inside wall. And like you said, Coop had nowhere to go. So that takes out 2 must-win drivers here tonight, James. That's huge for the chase, and that's going to bump up David Washington to your lead off of that, and he's probably going to get the EOL penalty for basically causing that, getting into the back. So maybe Jones will be taking your lead here on this restart.
We will see how Doug Atkinson and Kyle Barnes go ahead and rule on this. We can tell you that Austin Coop has shut it off for the night and has pulled it down to pit road, so he is out of this race. Hearing that Ashton Crowder is, and I would say pretty rightfully, angry at what's happened here. He didn't really have anywhere to go in this, nor did Freenars, nor did Coop. Pretty much everybody that got caught up in it just all was a bystander after Washington got into DeBarro.
It was just something we knew would happen eventually, but nor did I think it would happen on lap 64 here, James. We still got a whole lot of racing to go and a whole lot of Bristol left, so I didn't expect the bumper to come out too early. But as you mentioned, Washington was there for lap after lap after lap, and he was putting the pressure on, but the pressure got too much. He got in the back bumper and just sent that 99 around, and just it was over from there.
A lot of sorting out for the race officials to do. We've yet to hear a ruling from the tower. Understandably, I have a feeling there are a few drivers that are already walking into the trailer trying to get an explanation and vent their frustration, because I think you've got to feel for, Coop and Freenars and DeBarro and Crowder, because they didn't really have anywhere to go once this all started. They just got caught up in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And it was basically it wasn't anything they could do. Like you said, it was just the 99 not holding the brakes and going right back up the track, and it's something that it's wrecking 101, and nobody seems to have a claim on this caution, so race control will have to look at this replay to see what the actual call.
Back on our way here, green flag. We'll update that. We heard from the scoring tower. No one claimed the caution in that yellow flag period, so it will, per RSR rules, be reviewed after the race, and penalties will be issued upon review, so probably later tonight. So the best we can say, keep an eye on any of the social media channels if you're interested to see the fallout of that. I'd be shocked if we didn't have some sort of ruling come down from that some way, somehow, within the next few hours. But at the moment, Washington leads the race. Eberhardt is in second, Callisto third, Jones fourth, Sean Casto now up to the 5th position, and he's a guy who could use a victory to lock himself in. He's currently in on points at the moment, but go ahead and get a trophy in hand here before we start the playoffs at Chicagoland in a few weeks' time would make things a little bit easier, I think, for the driver of the number 46.
It really would make things a whole lot easier for anybody not above that cutoff line there, James. Is Washington able to pull slightly on his teammate of Eberhard, as now Eberhard's going to have to go battle with teammate Dylan Jones on the inside, and he's going to let him go going off into the corner. So that's something we really don't see a lot of here at Bristol, but when your teammates, it's a lot of give and take, and that's what we just saw there. Dylan Jones going to be bumped up to the second spot, and maybe he's going to be able to track down the 98 of David Washington.
Trying to hunt down Washington to go grab a position. He's got a few car lengths to go catch up to the rear bumper of the number 98, but Jones looks like he's got a pretty good piece. He's making tracks big time here. And I think, interestingly enough, on corner exit, he's a little bit lower than some of these guys that I've seen back through the field. Maybe about half a car groove down from where the majority of the field is exiting the corner. And it looks like he's really getting momentum, especially off of turn 2. That's where I see the 11 at its strongest. And here he is. He's already run down David Washington and is going after the race lead.
Yeah, the 11 has really turned up the heat on that restart, and he's been able to cut down to that inside line and get that run off pretty much every single lap here, James. He's found the rhythm, and Bristol is a really, really big rhythm track, and once you get locked into that groove, you can go flying, and that's what we're seeing from Jones right now as he's inside the 98 of Washington, going to get so close to that door. Not going to be quite here. We're going to see how he can work that inside line, because we haven't seen too many passes come from the inside, and Washington's not want to give it up as Eberhard did, so Dylan Jones is going to have his work cut out for him.
Big work for the 11 to try and get around the 98. Will just hang on to the lead at the moment, but boy, does Dylan Jones have some speed. He's the first guy that's really made the bottom work well all night long for anybody. Can't hang alongside the 98 for the moment, but Jones is there, and both he and Washington have checked out on everybody else to the tune of almost a full second. It's 7/10 back from Washington to Eberhard, and then 1.2 seconds back to Casto. So you've really got the class of the field up here showing their strength as we go under a green flag run.
Yeah, and this is where we start to see the strengths of these drivers during these green flag runs here, James. And right now we're seeing Washington control the field, and we knew he was fast. He was all over the back bumper of DeBarro through most of this race, so we knew he had what it takes to lead. But then Dylan Jones decided to join the mix. We saw him back running towards the top 5. He hadn't really turned on the heat until now, and he's able to stick up with Jones and Eberhard just behind him. So it's an ages 1, 2, 3 right now, and they've got to be loving it.
1, 2, 3 for the Chef Andy's Lobster Rolls machine and the Aegis Motorsports Star and Wings. We've seen both paint schemes jump out over the course of the season, but right now, Washington pacing the field, and then you've got Jones, and then you've got Eberhard, and Casto and Callisto's up there too. Back towards the back of the top 10, you got a lot of guys who really could use a win. And guess who else is there? Old John Abbott.
Oh, trouble in turn 1. Daniel Eberhard losing it off the corner there and basically hitting the inside wall hard. He's going to take it down underneath, maybe take it to pit road. Heavy damage to that car.
Big issues for Eberhard. Did not see what happened with that car, but trouble for Daniel Eberhard to knock him out of the top 5, and he'll take it down to pit road to get that car serviced.
Yeah, basically lost it off of turn 4, getting it on the throttle and hit the inside wall hard, but that's not going to take away from this battle for the lead here, James. Dylan Jones is there inside of Washington, and he's not giving up, not giving an inch. He really wants that lead just as badly as Washington wanted it from DeBarro, so we'll have to see how things heat up. I don't know if you're ever actually going to use the bumper on your teammate. You both got wins, so you're basically out there racing for a win because you're in the chase. So how aggressive do you get?
How aggressive do you get? How much do you push it? Especially here, we're only at lap 90. We're not even halfway through this race, and we saw how hard Washington pushed DeBarro. So do you see the same from Dylan Jones, especially when those two are just driving away from everybody at the moment? You've got a huge gap of 2 seconds back to Sean Casto, or at least a huge gap by Bristol standards.
And if you think about it, and vice versa, Washington knows Jones is faster. Washington knows Jones is his teammate. And if you're both pulling away so fast from the rest of the field, why not just let the driver of the 11 go? Give and take, especially with your teammates, especially at a track like Bristol. You don't want to let that temper get too far, and you don't want Dylan Jones to push it as much as Washington did with DeBarro. And accidents do happen at Bristol. Accidents happen more at Bristol than most tracks you'll see on this schedule, and because of that, tempers will flare, and you never want tempers to flare between teammates, especially getting this close to the chase when it's every man for himself. You just maybe to start thinking about a give and take situation there, James.
A give and take, and you wonder maybe if playoff points and wins and that sort of thing come into play. And by playoff points, we mean wins here on LSRTV, because the 2017 system is a little bit more newfangled than we can handle at the moment. But that extra win does bring you a few extra points at the beginning of the playoffs if you're Dylan Jones. And Washington's already got a few. Jones doesn't have as many. So if you're Andy Kessler atop the box calling all the strategy for Aegis, do you offer any sort of team orders here? Do you tell Washington at some point to give Jones the chance to run out front and go win this thing for himself?
I think you would have to just wait it out, especially if you're calling the shots for all the Aegis drivers. You don't want to overstep your boundaries between drivers, because each driver is different. That's what makes them so good. That's what makes them the class of the field. They're all good at their respective tracks and in the respective areas. You don't want to overstep boundaries, but we see Dylan Jones trying the inside once again, and we saw just a little bit of what we'll start to see here in a little bit of time. That 58 of Joseph Laplaka went 2 laps down that time by, and that's talking about lap traffic, which is so hard to navigate through here at Bristol, James, and we're going to start seeing that come up here very quickly.
Very, very quickly here, and Daniel Everhart is first of the cars that would have been lap traffic, but it looks like he might be pulling it down, and yellow flag comes out once again. A big wreck on the back straightaway. John Abbott is involved in this one, and I saw a few other cars here. Looks like, as the replay will come up momentarily, that Nelson Rivera got into the back of Doug Roth after Doug Roth got loose in the middle of the corner, and they just stacked it up from there.
Yeah, we're going to get that replay up for you. As you mentioned, getting into the back bumper and basically sending that driver, but it looks like Rivera got just a little bit loose. Yeah, you see him get contact and spin it, and then everybody trying to check up just pile in there. Shane Ewing and that 32-7 Rivera, everybody piling in on that back straightaway, and you got Abbott spinning out down the back straightaway. So carnage here on lap 100 of Bristol.
Abbott was involved. Brandon Bowie got into that. Shane Ewing was a part of that mess as well. And I see one more, the 16 of Corey Wolf. We talked about how he came down early and tried to pit to gain fresh tires, and that put him squarely in the middle of the field. It eventually has stuck him into this wreck. So a lot of guys caught up into that one, and we'll see what happens here. It looks like a good chunk of these drivers are going to come down pit road.
Yeah, everybody coming down pit road to fix their damages, and everybody coming down to get fresh tires. So we get ready to rack them and stack them once again here, James. But Dylan Jones going to take up on that second place, and he's going to be on the outside. And with this restart, it comes down to what if you want your teammate to be with you, because there's this thing us drivers like to call the countdown, and it's simply that. It's, do you want a countdown when we start? That way the teammate you're working with does not get screwed over going down the start, and he gets shoved to the back while you're out there leading. Do you want the countdown? That's what drivers will ask. And do you think Washington will give Dylan Jones that luxury, being how fast that 11 car is?
It's an interesting question to ask. I think Andy Kessler might be the one who ultimately makes the decision on that, maybe above Washington, because we know how well the Aegis drivers work together and try and coordinate things like that. So I don't think it's totally out of the question, but I think you're right. If you're Washington, you also have to consider just how quick Dylan Jones was on that last green flag run, and you wonder whether or not you want to give him an opportunity, because he might take advantage of it and take the lead away from you. And of course, you love to see the team do well, but there's a part of this where you want to go out and win for yourself too.
you want to be a part of that team that does well. You want to be the person that gets that win. So there's always that competition factor, and it always comes down to that. But us being this early on in this race and still having that much racing left to go, I see no issue with letting the 11 go, because we know Washington can hang up there with him. He was up there and he's been leading this race for the majority. He's been up there in the top 5, hasn't really left the top 2 this entire race. So I don't see why not just play a little give and take here, James.
Give and take, give and take, give and take. What a theme here at Bristol. We're going to get ready to get the green flag once again here in about half a lap as they go through turn 3, but we're going to extend it for another lap. Still trying to sort out everything in the back of the field is the word from race control, so we'll get everybody sorted out. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, I got to make sure everything's perfect for this restart and everybody is lined up the way they go, because you always want a smooth and easy restart here at Bristol. So props to race control for making that happen.
Part of the new regime here in the post LSRTV acquisition era of RSR. Kyle Barnes up atop the tower now calling the shots, so definitely going to see a few new things here throughout the rest of the year as you hear a different voice making all of the race control cars here, or calls rather, at Bristol tonight and through the rest of the 2017 season. Restart here coming on lap 107 though, as David Washington gets a solid jump away from everybody else. Jones is up top. He'll be able to go get second pretty quickly. We've got Justin Lisenby, who we have not spoken a lot about, but he's up in the 3rd spot, and then Sean Casso will clear him. So never mind, move the 46 up to the 3rd position.
Yeah, the 46 all over the back bumper of the 11 machine, and I think that answered the question of our countdown question there, James, is David Washington basically shot like a rocket off of that start and left Dylan Jones in the dust, but Dylan Jones easily reeling in that 98 machine as they go through the corners once again. But as you mentioned, Justin Lisenby, somebody we haven't really talked about, started in the 20th position and made his way up to 4th, so maybe he knows something that all these other drivers don't know about, passing, because he's done it. 20th to 4th, what an impressive run by that 31 machine so far.
31 machine really making it happen. They've settled out nicely at the front of this field, and Nelson Rivera now leading the pack of, it looks like, Wounded Warriors for the most part. Ross Cato's got the only clean car of that bunch, but he's racing around Andrew Farinars and Doug Roth, and Joseph Aplaca's right there, even though he's 2 laps down, but they're all kind of bunched up together. But Farinars and Cato and Roth are all fighting for position in that bunch.
Yeah, and look at Roth all over the back bumper of Cato, getting just a little bit bent out of shape there. Now we got Ferniars looking to the inside of Rivera, so we got a nice little battle for what looks to be the 6th place position, as the 88 looking to the inside, gonna maybe complete that pass, power it off the inside, and does complete that pass on the 7 of Rivera. Meanwhile, Washington has opened up that gap to about 4/10 of a second, now 5/10 of a second, James. So Dylan Jones may be saving his stuff here at the start of this run.
Everybody just trying to clear and go green for a little bit. So while it looks like they've settled for the most part, we're going to flip over to the driver of the number 27 machine. Ashton Crowder has come up to talk to us about what happened. And Ashton, it looks like you just ended up in a really, really bad spot and had nowhere to go. Tell us what happened from your perspective out there.
Well, really, James, I couldn't see too much what was happening in front of me. Before I knew it, they were wrecking, stacking them up, and got involved. Just Bristol, it's so hard to see, past a little bit in front of you with the roll bars and where they're situated. And I got in the back of, I forgot who, but once I got into the back of him, got on the brakes, and I think I may have gotten hit from behind, but somehow I got sent around and went straight to the inside wall and ended my night early. But basically spotting my teammate Justin Lisenby right now in the P3 position, doing pretty good.
Can you talk a little bit about the frustration that I know is there, because you had a good piece and this looked like it was going to be a great shot for you to get the win tonight. So how do you manage that now that you aren't going to be picking up the checkered flag, and kind of regroup mentally to get yourself prepared for Darlington next week?
I don't know if I'm really frustrated more than it just, kind of stings that got knocked out so early, but that just gives me more fuel to go into Darlington and hopefully do really good there. Darlington, one of my worst tracks, but been testing all week for the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series with Jake Nichols, and should be pretty good there. If we're not, though, we'll try to get ourselves a good finish, and if we are good, hopefully walk away with a W.
Before we let you go ahead and let everybody know who makes it happen for this 27 machine as you get set to go to Darlington next week to go grab a win.
Everybody at the Drill Spill, Crowder crew as well. They represent every week. JDR Graphics, JD Laird does really good paint schemes, really cool guy. And then Real Pics Photography Company, really great. And you guys for, doing the broadcast and taking over this league and definitely making it better so far.
Thanks for the time, Ashton, and we'll see you next week from Darlington. Best of luck to you. Hopefully it'll be a little bit better there than it was here tonight.
Hopefully. Thank you.
There's your driver, the number 27 machine, Ashton Crowder, out of this early after a big wreck at the front of the field that really totally changed a lot of things in this race. You had a host of guys who were up there. He was up there. Austin Coop was up there. Anthony DeBar was leading at the time, and those three guys are out of the race win picture pretty quickly. And, for some of those guys, especially DeBar and Coop, that was one really good shot at a victory that they had, and now that's gone.
It's gone, and like we mentioned, there still are 2 races left before this chase starts, so there's definitely a chance, especially for drivers like DeBarro and Coop, who are so good at the short tracks, to get it done. So we'll have to see what the future holds for those 2 drivers, but meanwhile up at the front, nothing really changes. As you heard Ashton Crowder say, Justin Lisenby making his way up to that 3rd place position, tracking down Dylan Jones right now. Dylan slowly but surely pulling in the 98 of David Washington, but that gap's still there.
It's still there. We're still just kind of waiting to see it sort itself out. And I wonder now, maybe it's sorting itself out more than even I think, because Washington's been pretty consistent with the lap times now that we're really under green. It's, 15-0, 14-9, 15-0, 14-9, 15-0. It just kind of keeps bouncing back and forth. And you can say the same for Jones, too. Those 2 cars are about equal at the front of this field, and neither one has really got the speed to run down or run away from the other.
Yeah, and that's where we have to see how long this green flag will hold up. You never really hear it at Bristol because we always get a caution before them, but green flag pit stops are always a thing. We're still a ways away from that coming into fruition here, James, but it's always something that the spotter, Andy, as you mentioned, who is over the Aegis crew, he's got to be thinking about that, along with all the other spotters here up on top of the box, and the crew chiefs up on top of the box, I should say, making those calls and green flag pit stops. Even though they are a way away, you got to be thinking about strategy, because getting onto pit road here is very, very difficult.
It's tricky and it's weird, and that's what makes it so complicated, because it's the only split pit road in NASCAR now. Martinsville had the reconfiguration in 1999, and that for a long while was very similar to this, in that you had pits on the front and the back straightaway, but now it is only Bristol that has the split pit straights on the front and the back straightaway in this series, and even in the Full Throttle Cup series. So you do kind of have to navigate that quickly, and the commitment cones too are really, really tricky, and you've got to be on it if you want to make sure you make it into pit road at the right time without any sort of issues.
Especially at 35 miles an hour, these cars going upwards of 140 down the straightaway, so getting those cars wound up to a school zone, I like to call it, and 35 miles an hour is going to be tricky, especially with these leaders who are already having to start to navigate lap traffic, getting through here. Now they're going to have to navigate people on both ends of the track coming in and off of pit road, so there's going to be cars everywhere here in a little bit. But speaking of our leaders, look at Dylan Jones in that 11, narrowing that gap down to only 0.3 of a second now, and he's there. He's closed it up off the turns number 2, and he's on the back bumper of that 98 machine.
coming back now. So Jones, I think, is pushing that car a little bit more than he was a few laps ago. And that, to me, feels like the story of not only this green flag run, but every one of the long green flag runs, and maybe even this whole race at Bristol, is when guys decide to go for it versus when they decide to lay off the gas a little bit. You can slow down and go fast here, as old pal DW likes to say, but it's the selection of when and the decision to push the button that can change races and make or break things at Bristol, as can lap traffic, which is exactly where the leaders are at the moment, trapped behind Daniel Eberhardt and Doug Roth.
Yeah, and this is where it makes it so hard to pass and navigate, because you got the lap traffic is too wide, and you'll see Dylan Jones get held up by Doug Roth there on the inside, so he quickly has to go high and make it through. So I think the best bet for the leaders right here is just to follow through as they're lapping their teammate, that 90 of Eberhardt now. Just follow through. Dylan will have plenty of opportunity maybe to get up to that 98 and pass, but right now it's the safest bet to just follow each other through, especially this mess of lap traffic.
Lap traffic nearly was an issue there. Doug Roth just about got into the rear of Daniel Eberhardt right behind these guys, so that nearly was a very, very big issue. And then it's Sean Casto's turn now that looks like our front two have cleared most of all that mess to try and find his way up to the front of all of this mess. And I honestly, if I'm Casto right now, I'm just kind of shaking in my boots, not necessarily because I'm not faster than these guys, but you just don't want to get caught up in anything, and it's so easy to do here at Bristol with the lack of racing room you have.
Yeah, and it is really easy to run out of room here. James is now, we saw with that lap traffic, David Washington was able to open back up that gap on Dylan Jones to about 0.6 of a second now. So they're going to be trading back and forth for the foreseeable future over this green flag run. They'll catch and then they'll pull, they'll catch and then they'll pull, and we'll have to see where things shake out here in the next few laps as we're getting into a lengthy green flag run here, James.
A pretty lengthy green flag run, and oh, by the way, past the iRacing Midway race break. So let's go ahead and do that, since we're already a little bit past it, actually about the 60% point of tonight's race. But tonight's iRacing Midway race break is brought to you by iRacing, the leading online racing simulation. Developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service, iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks all around the world. In the fast-paced world of esports, iRacing is a one-stop shop for online racing with officially sanctioned racing from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, the Car Store, USAC, Blancpain GT, the VLM Endurance Championship, the Full Moon that totally has me unable to pronounce any sort of acronyms tonight, and more. David Washington is your race leader at the moment. Dylan Jones in second by about a second. And then Sean Casto sits in third at the moment. Justin Lisaby runs in the fourth position. Trevor Rapallo sits in fifth. While we run, Brandon Bowie runs in the sixth spot. Nick Silver currently holding down the seventh spot. Andrew Farinars has rallied from that earlier wreck to run in eighth. Ross Cato sits in ninth. And then Lionel Calisto rounds out your top 10.
Dwayne Vincent gonna take that top 10 away, so move Lionel Calisto to 11th and the final car on the lead lap. So 12th belongs to Doug Roth. Shane Ewing it's gonna be 13th, 14th Joseph Blacka, Daniel Eberhardt 15th, 16th belongs to Nelson Rivera, 17th John Abbott, 18th Mitch Rollo, Corey Wolf is gonna be 19th, and Anthony DeBarro is gonna round out your top 20.
21st, Austin Coop, he's on pit road, done for the night, as is Ashton Crowder, who got caught up in that big wreck in the front of the field alongside Coop. Currently sits 22nd. 23rd is where Randy Yoakum is. Douglas Wyatt is in 24th. And then it is Gabriel Wood in 25th and Giovanni Vermonti in 26th to round out the field as they run. And that has been your iRacing Midway race break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, visit iRacing.com to sign up today. For a limited time, you can visit iRacing.com/World of Outlaws and take advantage of exclusive promo codes to get yourself on the sim with a 1-year membership for half the price. Once again, That is iRacing.com/World of Outlaws. David Washington is your race leader. David Washington is currently out in front by almost a second as Dylan Jones is trying to work his way around Dwayne Vincent to try and go put him a lap down from at least the second position. Vincent already being scored a lap down since Washington's cleared him, but Jones trying to join Washington on that plateau and be the only other driver to have lapped Dwayne Vincent. So here we go. Underneath the 13 goes Dylan Jones, and he makes that easy. So now he'll try and chase down Washington to go get the lead once more.
Yeah, and it just goes to show how fast things can change here at Bristol, because when we were going through that midway race break, James, there were 11 cars on the lead lap, but Washington and Jones have been on a tear, just lapping driver after driver, now putting Ross Cato under the lap down marker. So there's 8 cars on the lead lap, so it's becoming a lap party here as everybody's falling victim to David Washington.
Washington rolling. He's got that 98 machine really going, and has driven off after that very crazy incident at the front of the field, and has just kind of controlled this since then. He's been out in front. He's been the best of anybody, and holy cow, it's going to be really tough, I think, to catch him. You're going to have to get a late restart, I think, in some way, shape, or form, and then a little bit of help maybe. Jones might have the car to do it, but on long runs, David Washington is the man to beat.
He is, and for a while there, I thought it was going to be his teammate Dylan Jones in that 11 car, but he's pretty much fallen off almost 1.6, or he is 1.6 seconds back now there, James. So he's got some work to do, but this lap traffic definitely is not helping his case. He's just now getting to the back bumper of Ross Cato in that 12. Cato going to surrender to the bottom line as he tries to make his way through, but Washington has got to be loving this clear track in the front and clear track out the back. He's got some breathing room, and he's going to use it all up here tonight at Bristol.
Into Rome, which is a really nice thing, especially when you consider that the next car on track in front of Washington is Joseph LaPlaca, and LaPlaca is almost a straightaway ahead of David Washington. So the 98 car has got a pretty clear amount of racetrack as far as Bristol is concerned, which is impressive. You don't really get that much running room, but with the attrition rate that we've had, you know, a lot of cars are already out of this race. Everybody from Mitch Rollo is done for the night for sure. So when you only have 17 cars at Bristol, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of get around this place.
It does, and it really opens up the track, and you're basically there by yourself now. That doesn't mean to, zone completely out, because that's when Bristol will take advantage of you and will eat you up and spit you out. You cannot get too laxed at this track, because it'll always come back and bite you, and I think David Washington is well aware of that, as many times as he has turned laps at this track, and he's doing it quite well here tonight, and looks to carry on with 4 wins now, but not going to get too far ahead of myself or himself, as there's still a lot of racing left to go here, James.
Still a decent amount of it. We've got 225 laps on the docket. We've only completed 172 of them at this point, so still a handy amount of racing left to go. 52 laps to settle this race here at Bristol. David Washington still out in front of all of this, and while he runs around and takes care of business, we're going to turn to another driver who we've caught up with next to the infield care center here at Bristol, Austin Coop, who was also involved in that big race melee early on with Washington and DeBarro and Crowder and company here with us. And Austin, it just looked like you had nothing to do, and you almost looked like you were going to get away from it, and then DeBarro came right up into you, and you got stuck in a terrible place and a terrible time. What did you see out of your front windshield?
Well, I saw them get together. They'd made contact, and I knew it was going to be pretty risky for me to do anything, brake, go for it. So then I saw Dylan. He was on the inside, and I thought, if Dylan can make it through this, I can too. So I just stayed to his right, and then it looked like I was in the clear, and I wasn't. I had no idea that looked like DeBarro. I think that's who it was. It came back up the track, and it's really a shame. I think that really puts the fork in it for us. especially if we can't win the next 2 races. And it's hard to win these races. These races are not easy to win. And you know, the guy up front right now, he's doing a really good job this season of being able to win so many races. You know, just thinks to be caught up in that, and the guy who, you know, causes it still up there. But that's sometimes how racing works out. So, you know, looking forward to seeing how this one ends. And there's only 8 cars in the lead lap.
I asked Ashton Crowder this question earlier. I'll ask it to you now, especially since we know you love the short tracks more than anything else on this sim, and you are good at them. Does it sting a little bit more than usual, given the circumstances and given how well you had been running? And how much do you sort of split your time up between here and Richmond?
Well, it definitely does make it sting, but you know, just got to keep going and rolling with the punches here.
And do us one favor and tell everybody who makes it happen for everybody at the 6 team.
Number 6, James. But yeah, the you know, LSRTV, and you know, got to thank my parents at home.
Thanks, Austin, for the time, and we will see you 1 week from tonight at Darlington.
See you then.
So, Austin Coop out of this race early as we get a yellow flag here once again. Joseph LaPlaca loses control of the car. Just said he looped it around in race control, so we'll claim that yellow flag, and no issues will go on after that. Meanwhile, everybody comes down pit road. David Washington leads the field for 4 tires and fuel on what should be the last stop of this race.
It should be, and he should be able to run away with it. But you can't forget about that 11 of Dylan Jones, who has been there, but was kind of falling off there at the last few moments of that lap, or that run, I should say. Almost about 2 seconds off of there as we finished, but that was due to lap traffic. So we'll have to see how everything stacks up here. We got Rapallo, somebody we have really, you know, mentioned a lot of in this race, in that 9 machine. He's going to be bumped up to that 3rd place position there, James.
So a good stop there from Trevor Rapallo, and pretty good time to have one if you're the driver of the number 9 machine. And then he comes down pit road to switch up the game a little bit. So changes everything once he gets out there and makes it happen. But it looks like once we shuffle this through, will actually be scored in the 4th spot, which is still better than what he was. But Washington, Jones, Casto, and then Rapallo and Lisenby should be your top 5 when we get back to this.
And I don't think we can have this conversation without talking about Justin Lisenby, who is up there towards the start of the run, and he is our biggest mover of the race so far here. James started in that 20th position and worked his way up to be inside the top 5, so he's definitely got a fast car. And as you've mentioned, with it being possibly the last stop of this race, being how much of a green flag run we had there, and how long we had it, you know, he's a contender. I mean, he's been able to pass, do something that I thought was pretty much non-existent here at Bristol, and that's passing. So he's been able to basically prove me wrong and evade my words. So we'll have to see what that 31 has in store for the tree start.
What does he have in store, and is this your chance maybe to go after David Washington? Can you make it happen? Can you get up and really get alongside him and steal what has been his race for the most part away from him? Because he was really in control under that last green flag run, and that was the longest green flag run of the night.
It was, and now we have a lot less cars to worry about on that lead lap there. James, 9 cars, with Farniar's being on that 88, and that 88 being on that 8th place position, and Cato in that 9th place position, now being the last car on the lead lap. So how everything shakes up and who's willing to push it the hardest is all going to come to fruition here in this next corner.
As we get ready for the restart once more, coming on lap 187, going to go underneath the 50 to go mark, and Washington gets away well, but Dylan Jones gets away pretty well too, and he might be able to stick it to the outside. Can't get there though on corner exit. Washington's got the spot, and they're battling back for 4th. Justin Lisenby and Trevor Rapallo side by side.
And this is where you have to give it all you have is on this restart, because this is where you can really use up the bottom and the top lanes to get past people. So you'll have to use up these fresh tires, not too much, but just enough to make your move. And you're going to see Dylan Jones dive it down to the bottom and stick it on that middle lane, but he's ultimately going to lose time to David Washington there. So Dylan Jones going to try everything he can to keep up with his teammate in that 98. Meanwhile, Sean Casto on the back bumper of Dylan Jones.
We nearly had another yellow flag just a moment ago. Nick Silver got into the back of Trevor Rapallo on corner entry in turn 1 just a few laps ago, and the 9 car was sideways for about half of that corner, was able to gather it up and keep it going, so we stayed green, but Rapallo now back to the 7th spot after restarting in 4th.
We have a new second place driver. That's going to be that 46 of Sean Casto making his way by that 11 of Dylan Jones. Dylan Jones struggling on this start. Now he's going to try to fend off the 31 of Justin Lisenby up there. But now Sean Casto has his sights set on the 98 of David Washington, looking to spoil such a dominant run that he's had here tonight, James. So we'll have to see if that 46 has what it takes to get up there. Meanwhile, the 31 looming in the distance all over the back bumper of that 11.
Really fighting our Lisenby and Bowie. That's a tight race. That's probably the best battle on track at the moment. Trying to see if Jones is going to be able to reel Casto back in and maybe has a little bit more speed on the long green flag run. But you're right. Lisenby and Bowie are just going after each other, trying to get the 4th position.
And like I mentioned before, James, you have to give it all you got, especially now it's crunch time. You have to make the moves now because the tires are not going to be there here in a few laps, and you'll have to surrender that top line, and it's just going to be a snake, so you got to do anything you can. And here's what we saw on about lap 60, James. Do you start to use that bumper once again? What Washington did to DeBarro to move him out of the way, do you start doing that? Do you start thinking about that, especially getting closer and closer to these cars, and you get frustrated and the laps are closing down and laps go by so fast here at Bristol? Do you start to use that bumper?
Or rather, when do you? Because I think you almost have to at some point, but you have to be very judicious about when. In the same way that Kyle Busch was at the end of stage 1 on Saturday night, waited until the last lap to put it on Kyle Larson so that Larson didn't have a chance to retaliate. Now, of course, if you're further back in the field, you don't really have that option, and you have to use it a little bit earlier just to get up to the front of the field. But if you're Sean Casto and you can get back to David Washington, then you have a chance. It's a small chance, but it's a chance.
And it's the chance that you gotta fight for. You've gotta always drive it like you have that chance, and that is exactly what Casto's doing. Meanwhile, just behind him, Lisenby looking to the Lisenby all over the back bumper of the 11 of Dylan Jones, and then you got Nick Silver and Brandon Bowie just behind them. So we got a nice little pack here for the battle of the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th place position. So we'll have to see how that plans out with Rapallo just behind them.
Yep, they've really stacked it up there, and I wonder if this set of tires just isn't agreeing with that 11 machine, because Dylan Jones has struggled for speed since we got the green flag once more. He has not had the same car that he had earlier on in this race as the rubber has come into this racetrack. Lisenby there still has the 4th spot. Bowie really trying to find a way underneath him to get it, but he just doesn't have the speed to get around the 31 machine.
And this is just going to help Dylan Jones drive away if Brandon Bowie keeps sticking it in there like the thorn in the side of that 31 of Justin Lisenby just will not go away, and he's going to be there coming off the corner. Brandon Bowie on the inside, not going to be able to quite make it. He's going to try everything he can. That's going to bring Nick Silver closer to the conversation as they come off of turn 4.
Silver now hanging in this too, and Bowie's got to be careful because Silver could jump right to his outside and go grab that spot here as we start to get down to it, getting close to 20 laps to go here at Bristol. And Silver's hanging tough right there, so Bowie has to be careful.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say that the laps are winding down here, James. We're getting too wrapped up in the action. We can't forget that this race is just about over, and that's why we're seeing this action, because all these drivers know that they don't have much time, and time is limited here at Bristol, especially with how fast these laps go. So you got to give it everything you got. Lisenby able to pull away just a little bit on Bowie now, as Bowie's got to try to fight off that 24 of Nick Silver, who is starting to shade that inside line, but he can't quite make it work. Meanwhile, up towards the front of the field, Sean Casto falling to about a 1.3 second gap, and Jones is starting to reel him in as David Washington is driving away.
Old D-Wash has got this place figured out pretty well, I would say. And Jones, of course, as soon as I say he doesn't have the car to catch up with anybody, he finally starts showing some speed and gets on the go button. So I wonder if it takes maybe 5 or 10 laps to get in, and he's just out here to make me look like a fool, because all of a sudden he's right on the rear bumper of Sean Casto trying to take second away.
But I do not think it'll be enough to catch that David Washington machine up there in that 98 as the 11 looks to the inside of Sean Casto, I should say, coming through here. The 11 trying to get everything he can running that middle line, but just cannot quite get to the inside of that 46 machine.
Trying to find a way around Sean Casto, but just can't quite make it happen, and he got really loose off of turn 4. Just about lost the rear end of that car, and oh man, that was really, really close. Dylan Jones nearly threw away a podium finish there on one corner.
Yeah, and all he has to do is try to keep the tires under it now, maybe make the move on Casto if he sees it present, but he cannot push it too hard. He is sitting 4th place in that points position, so he does have a little bit of wiggle room, but you do not want to wreck the car. You want to finish, and you want to get all the points possible out of this. And right now, just behind him, Bowie able to finally get around Lisenby in a shocking turn of events. Now Silver trying to look to do the same, looking towards the inside of that 31 machine, not going to quite be there. We're closing in on 10 laps to go, James.
Working our way towards it. Washington here on the back straightaway, just tearing away from everybody else. And Jones now underneath Casto and got a really good run this time. This might be the moment. There it is. I think Casto just got up in the marbles ever so slightly, and Dylan Jones will go to the 2nd position.
He does, and that's the best thing for him. He gets out there, he's going to get that clean air just a bit, and he'll be able to drive away from that 46 machine. That is to say, if the 46 machine is not hiding something, one last ditch effort, because as you mentioned, Dylan Jones was able to do it, close in that gap really fast. Will the 46 be able to do the same? Just behind them, Silver and Lisenby still battling for that 5th place position. Nobody wanting to give an inch here for that top five spot.
Nobody wanting to give any sort of inches, and they're just going at it. Those three, Lisenby, Silver, and Rapallo, and all that sort of madness just going crazy back there towards the back of the top 5. They're bunched up like sardines, and nobody's really able to get anything on anybody.
And that's what we're seeing. We're starting to see the tires wear down here as we get down into the final few laps here, coming to take 6 laps to go this time by James, and everybody has got to get everything they can. As you see Bowie just now on the back bumper of that 46 machine, so that battle for the 3rd place position is going to hype up real quick as he's all over the back bumper of the 46 machine, having to deal with Lapalaka going through the turn, and they're going to get through it now. 5 laps to go.
Will be 4 here momentarily with the way they work these laps. And now here comes Brandon Bowie, now fighting Sean Casto, trying to get the 3rd spot away. Casto's car fading really, really badly here right at the end of this race. Jones is driven away from him by a second. And then, of course, you've got Washington there at the front of the field, who only has a handful of laps left to go grab the victory.
He does, and he's just got to make it through a few more corners smoothly as Jones loses it off the corner. He's going to lose a ton of spots all the way back behind the 9 of Trevor Apollo going through there, so that spoils it as now they have to work through the lap traffic of the 58 of Joseph Black on the high side. Heartbreak for Dylan Jones.
Oh, he had a few moments like that and nearly lost the rear end of the car, and it finally bit him, and now he's back in the 7th spot, and Sean Casto jumps up to P2. So, easy stuff, though, for David Washington, the driver of the number 98 machine, gonna make it happen here. Comes around turn 3, turn 4, dominates once we go into green to get another victory here in the Full Throttle Cup Series. David Washington wins tonight's race from Bristol.
And what a close battle for second there, James, as Casto was just able to eat out Brandon Bowie on the outside line with scraping the wall to get it done. 46 comes home in second. Brandon Bowie, what a run by that driver, coming from 19th to 3rd to bring it home in that 3rd place position.
Casto kept his car cleaner than anybody else at the front of the field all night. Brandon Bowie rebounded nicely from that wreck with Doug Roth to go get a third spot and had to fight. A lot of these guys, I think, had to fight or keep their cars clean to make it happen tonight, but big runs from both of them and a lot of guys here in the top 10. We are going to take a commercial break and we'll come back here on LSR TV. We'll go through our full field rundown and talk to tonight's top 3 finishers from Bristol Motor Speedway. You're watching the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series on LSR TV, your home for sim racing.
I actually, really enjoy dirt racing. Feels good to get in the car, and we have, great cars and engines and things at KKR, so it's nice to drive a fast sprint car.
Couple of separate lines developing, 3 wide action on a turn 2. Craig Kitzer, Casey Kane, and Garrett Pittman going at it.
I think the differences between, NASCAR and the sprint races on dirt is just a much different mindset. The way you drive your cars, the setup, the feel you're looking for. I think one of the hardest things to tell as a fan is when you're watching a race, whether it's a NASCAR race, a dirt race, is just what's really going on in the car. With iRacing, you can get the way that the track's changing, which they've done a great job in how the track changes throughout the night or throughout the race, just to try to capture it and let the fans play it and realize, man, there's actually a lot going on, and you can't always see that when you watch a race. So I think it's pretty neat. It's, enjoyable for me, but at the end of the day, it's actually much of a simulation, and there's a lot of ways that you can learn from that. And early on it was neat to look at the Cup tracks that I was going to, places that I had never been, so I think it kind of gives you a head start leading into a weekend. It's pretty real life, and that's pretty neat.
That's what I meant.
Welcome back to LSR TV's coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series, presented by Gary Mercer Trucking. Here tonight at Bristol Motor Speedway, where David Washington has won tonight's race at Bristol after just running away with it under green flag. And while we go through our field, we'll take a look at where your favorite driver finished in the full field rundown, and Washington will lead off that with another win. I think that's 5 now in the year for him. Sean Casto finishes in the 2nd position. Bowie will come home in 3rd. Justin Lisenby will be 4th. Nick Silver comes home and gets a top 5 finish out of this. Trevor Rapallo saved it and nearly lost it and then got 6th. Dylan Jones came home in 7th. Andrew Freenars finishes 8th, and then Ross Cato was 9th. Last car on the lead lap, Shane Ewing finishes 10th to round out your top 10 tonight.
11th goes to that 13 machine of Dwayne Vincent. Lionel Callisto is going to be 12th. 13th belongs to Doug Roth. Joseph Laplaca is going to be 14th. Daniel Everhart's going to round out 15th. Nelson Rivera 16th. 17th belongs to John Abbott. Mitch Rollo is going to be 18th. 19th, Ashton Crowder and Corey Wolf round out your top 20.
21st is Austin Coop tonight after getting caught up in an early wreck. Anthony DeBarro is 22nd. Randy Yoakum will finish 23rd. Douglas Wyatt will be 24th. Gabe Wood finishes 25th. And Gio Bramonti finishes in the 26th position tonight. So there is a look at your full field rundown after the 23rd race of the 2017 Full Throttle Cup Series season. And we bring in now tonight's winner after just running away with it on long green flag runs. David Washington comes home with the victory tonight. And makes it happen, and we'll get Dave here in a moment for an interview, but just the way he ran away under green flag conditions, Murdoch, was pretty impressive, I think, to say the least.
It was. He really took it from about lap 60 on there, James. He basically took the torch and ran with it around this track, and he's definitely set a precedent for how fast you can definitely go here at Bristol Motor Speedway. So what a phenomenal job by that 98 machine.
And I think he can speak for it himself, Dave. You had a really, really fast piece on long green flag runs. And I wonder, was that a call just before the race on your setup to have it set up for the long green flag runs, or did you just kind of find a way to drive it that just settled in really nicely for you once we got going?
Yeah, pretty much just figured out something last night in the way I was braking. It just really helped from center off. I was literally, to get back to the gas, if I hit the brakes at the right point, literally just a little bit before center, and the car would just hook and go.
And to have the help that you did up front, I know you had Dylan Jones up there too racing, and there were points there where it looked like you two were going to maybe get into it. So did you guys talk at all about how you kind of wanted this to play out, or at least kind of orchestrate things a little bit at the front just to make sure that you two got what you needed out of this race?
No, there was really no talks. It's like I said last week and the week before there, it's just ride until the end, until the chase starts, and go from there. Now he's basically trying different things. The first couple laps, a lot of the guys were quicker than me. After we got a couple laps in, I was running a totally different line than everybody else. And that's what worked for me. But as we got into, the later run there, the car it did not fall off like I thought it was going to, but overall it was good.
And how big is a run like this, especially we're getting close towards the chase, and that you had that massive streak out on the West Coast where you were just on fire, and it's come and gone in points since. You've had some bad luck too, but to have it really set up now as we get into playoff time, how big is that for you to be able to post a run like this?
Nah, I mean, this is one of those runs that, yes, it's good to win, but in hindsight, if from my point of view with the netcode with DeBarro, it kind of set the tone a little bit different, because that's not the way I wanted to play out. Because I know he's racing to try to get into chase, and didn't want to see that happen. But yeah, it just changed the whole aspect of the race for me. After that, I almost pulled over and left, but I didn't. I stuck it out. Just a quiet week.
I know there are a lot of people that make this 98 quick, so go ahead and let the folks know who makes it happen to get you victory number 5 on the season this evening.
Yeah, big shout out to Julio for putting me in this car. My mom, Andy for sitting on the box every week. All the guys at Aegis. Put in a bunch of testing this week, and it paid off. You guys for broadcasting it, and of course LSR for having this league now. It's a pleasure to run it.
Well, thanks for the time, Dave, and we will see you 1 week from tonight down in South Carolina at Darlington.
Thanks, guys.
So, David Washington gets it done, and from there we hand it off to Mr. Chris Murdoch, who has Sean Casto, of all people, ready to talk to us in that number 46 machine.
And what a drive to come home in second by that number 46 machine. Started in lucky number, position number 13. Sean, how was the car? How was the track out there tonight?
Daytime setup, nighttime race, lots of grip. Lot of grip up top as well, by the wall rather. Third lane was where I stayed most of the night. Was able to kind of stay in a safe spot. It was a pretty good race. Just tried to stay safe.
And that's always the key at Bristol, is just to come out and finish the race. But talking about finishes and going into the chase, you being the lucky number 13 driver in the current playoff grid coming into this race, winless, what does it to mean to come out here and be consistent and get finish after finish, good finish?
It's always good to build momentum. That's That's always key to feel like you can get up there and run with them. Strategy, I'm known to pull a card or two, but when you get up there, you got to be able to keep it up there too. About the win, I'm hearing potential things about a mid-race caution. That win may be subject to change. I don't know.
It's all subject to change at this moment in time, but at this moment in time, you are sitting without this win, and I want to stay on the subject of the playoffs right now. If what you're talking about does not work out, how confident are you going into Darlington and Richmond that 46 machine will be competitive going into those two tracks?
Darlington is always is a driver's track. I could put it between the ditches pretty easily. We'll see how that shakes up. Tire wear, we'll see how that goes. I don't have any fears about getting into the chase. It's about building momentum, like we said.
And what a great momentum builder you had tonight with a solid run there, Sean. Before we let you go, though, sponsor shout-outs, who make it happen for that 46 machine?
I'd like to thank the O'Reilly Auto Parts teammate, Prestige Worldwide Nick Silver. He came home 5th. McDonald's there, Ford. Just overall, I'd like to thank the field for mostly running fairly clean there. That was good stuff.
And there you have it, guys. Thanks, Sean. Congratulations on your second place finish. We'll see how everything wraps up here by the end of the night, but great to have you. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you, boys. Great to have you all as well.
And there you have it, guys. That's the 46 of Sean Casto.
Can happen here at Bristol, and came out on the other side with a very, very big third place run. Did Brandon Bowie in that number 44 machine. And Brandon, I think the regroup mentally has to be the thing that jumps out to me from tonight. So how do you sort things out when you get caught up in a wreck like that and say, okay, this is Bristol, and given the way the race has gone tonight, we still have a chance. Maybe we get back up there?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of, just trying to stay out of trouble, and I ended up getting in trouble and hitting my teammate at the same time. So at that point, it would just mentally just go after it and just go for it. And whatever happens, happens. And came out with a top 3, so I'll take it.
And you've had speed at points in these races, and just you haven't had the finishes come your way. You've been caught up in stuff, and things have happened over the course of the season. So to be up here on the podium finally, how big is it for you in this 44 team?
Oh, it's huge. My consistency lately has been pretty horrible, to be honest. I mean, I just don't know how I can be so fast at times and then get caught up in a wreck or just make mistake after mistake after mistake. So, it's really thankful to the team, to Lodestar team. I mean, they have, worked with me and trying to get my confidence back and just try to stay consistent in these last 2 weeks. I think it kind of shows that I'm kind of getting that confidence back, and hopefully we can continue that into the playoffs.
And who do you need to thank for making it possible for you in this 44 team?
I definitely got to thank, Lodestar. They brought me on the beginning of the season as a rookie and have helped me tremendously up to this day. And I got to definitely thank the family for allowing me to get on and take the time to practice and race. And also got to thank you guys and RSR for putting on a good race as always.
Thanks for the time, Brandon, and see you down in South Carolina next week.
All righty.
So that wraps up your interviews with your top 3 finishers here at Bristol. And Mr. Murdoch, that gives us the chance to close the book here on Bristol and begin looking towards Darlington, a throwback race. We've already internally seen some of the paint schemes that you'll see next Monday night, which is going to be a lot of fun, I think. I know you can expect at least one Dale Jarrett paint scheme, though I won't say which, but I know he's in the field, and there are going to be a few others as well. Darlington brings out a lot of the past, and it'll be really cool, I think, to see a lot of these drivers honor a lot of past greats, both in sim and in real life, when we get to the famed track, that egg in South Carolina next week.
And Darlington is such a great track, just not just because of all the great paint schemes we get to see, but all of the racing, how tight the racing is. It's another high line track where you'll be running right up against that wall, and a lot of people will get their Darlington stripes. So we'll have to see who prevails. It's a tight race for a win. A lot of drivers need a win to get into this chase. So everything comes down to these final two races.
Everything comes down to it for a lot of these guys, and boy, it's going to be really, really tight at the top of that standing list here. We'll have a pretty good battle for whoever ends up with the most wins in the regular season, and then you've got that battle right down at the end, just trying to make the playoffs, and you could see some desperations from some of these guys in the next 2 weeks.
You can, and it'll be interesting. There's a lot of drivers that have a lot of eyes on them, and the two drivers that got taken out earlier, DeBarro, Coop, they're two of the main drivers that are up there in the hunt for the win, and they need it. They're going to be going all out. They're going to be giving it everything they have. And Darlington and Richmond are two tracks to get it done. Just like this track, they are very bumper heavy. You'll see a lot of drivers using the bumper, and that's what makes those tracks so great.
It will be very, very impressive to see, and we're going to throw it back properly next week too, because yours truly is going to go buddy up with the Clash, because I've got London calling here. So Jacob Seelman will come back and be on the mic next week. Mr. Murdoch, a longtime friend of RSR, and we know he's going to have a lot of fun doing that, I think, and you'll be a lot of fun too.
Jacob was who I had started RSR with back in 2016, right before, or maybe 2015, right before he handed off the torch to you, James. And it's going to be interesting to see. We've enjoyed you being on our soil for a while, but can't wait to see what you got over across the pond. And Jacob, always such an exciting person to have around in the booth, and I can't wait for Darlington.
And don't you worry, if you miss me, I'll be back in Richmond in 2 weeks' time, so I won't be going too far away, but just need to make sure I get over there first. But before we sign off on tonight's broadcast, we will remind you that the one yellow flag involving David Washington, Anthony DeBarro, Austin Coop, Ashton Crowder, and company was not claimed during the race. So as per RealSimRacing.com rules, that caution will go under review, and probably is already under review at this point, by the race officials, and they will rule on it whatever way they see fit. And when that ruling comes, either with or without sanctions, we will let you know on the Real Sim Racing and LSRTV social media channels, Facebook and Twitter. There is a separate account for each, so make sure you like and follow those if you want to get updates on what happens regarding that yellow flag. In the meantime, though, we'll go ahead and conclude tonight's coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking here on LSR TV from Thunder Valley. So, for my colleague up at the booth, Chris Murdoch, for our lovely and talented producer, Cisco Scaramuza, for Kyle Barnes and Doug Atkinson running the show at RealSimRacing.com, and for Laura Lawson, DJ Lyon, and Evan Pasoko at LSR TV, I am James Fike saying thank you for watching tonight's broadcast. I will see you in Richmond, but tune in next week, same time, same place, for our friend Jacob Seelman. He will lead the broadcast of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series from Darlington, the Throwback Grace. Until then, good night, everybody.